So welcome, 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 Danya. I so appreciate your consistent visionary leadership, authenticity, and all that you do for so many. And as always at Setsi, we begin all things by giving thanks to our creator. We give thanks to our ancestors. We give thanks to the original stewards of the various lands we're on. We acknowledge all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We give thanks to all our elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So please introduce yourselves to our listeners and viewers and share a bit about your remarkable work.
Oh, thank you, Victor. Thank you for having me here. Thank you for always starting conversations in this way. And thank you for being so present in everything that you do. My name is Danya Pastuszek. I am a wife. I am a mom. I'm a neighbor and a daughter and a sister. And those are the roles that feel really real to me right now. In my professional life, I'm a person who really, really believes in and has seen the power that people have when they come together in their places. We all need places where we feel like we belong. We all should be able to love the places that we're in. Unfortunately, systems make that not always possible, but there's beautiful things in every place. Every human being in every place has unique and beautiful gifts to bring to that place. And my passion, the way that I express my passion is by helping people build collaboratives in the places where they live. And I currently get to do that at the Tamarack Institute for Community Engagement as co-CEO alongside the fantastic and brilliant Liz Weaver.
Incredible, fantastic, remarkable, and loving Liz Weaver, our good colleague. Thank you so much for that introduction and sharing your work, passions, and convictions with our colleagues and our community to practice. So what inspires you about your work right now? What has you curious?
So first, I should say, because you offered such a remarkable acknowledgement of where we are, and because I did just speak to place, that I am joining you today in the dark of night on one of these short days of the year as a white settler of Ukrainian and Jewish origin, of amazing grandmothers who came to the country that's known as the US so that I could live a beautiful life and raise my family on this continent. I live now in the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people, and I'm very grateful for how they've stewarded these lands for millennia. And I join others, many others, millions of others, many of whom I know we're in conversation with right now, who are committed to facing history and contributing to reconciliation. Don't always get that right, but hold that commitment and that accountability. What inspires me about my work right now is that this is a difficult moment in history. I don't know that I've lived through a moment like this. I talk to lots of people older than myself who also say they haven't lived through a moment like this. And yet I'm inspired by seeing people coming together. And really, we were talking about empathy before we pressed record, really trying to bring empathy to the people who were around them, even when they might not feel like that empathy is being returned to them. I'm inspired by the people who are trying to learn about the assets and the gifts of the places where they are, who are trying to learn about the histories, including the histories of oppression in the places where they are, who are really trying to understand what's uniquely wonderful and what's uniquely problematic about the places where they are, and then join together with other people to make the changes that will lead us toward equity and justice. And I'm inspired that people are doing that in ways increasingly that are looking at how the issues of racism, the issues of colonization, the issues of poverty, the issues of loneliness, and us not being connected to one another are all connected because it's bringing people together who might have been having different conversations, who are really after the same thing into the same conversation so that they can do more impactful, more transformational work together.
Ashe, ashe, ashe. Thank you so much for that. So my next question is, what challenges and barriers do you face in your work, and how are you and your colleagues working to overcome some of these challenges and barriers?
It's worth starting the conversation with a little grounding in what poverty looks like on these lands right now, because this really is the challenge, the opportunity that my colleagues in the Tamarack Network are working to address. So what we know right now is that based on provisional data from the 2022 census, poverty is at 9.8%, and this is up dramatically from where it was in 2020. It was at 6.4% before. These percentages also exclude a lot of people, millions of people who earn above the official poverty line, but still can't afford good food and housing and utilities and childcare and other basic necessities, still can't afford to live the human rights that we're all entitled to. These percentages also exclude undocumented people in Canada, as well as people living on First Nations. And even within this number, not every person on these lands is equally susceptible to living a life free of poverty. Historically marginalized groups like Indigenous people, racialized people, newcomers, people with disabilities, seniors, young people, people identifying as 2S LGBTQIA+, much more likely to live in poverty. Poverty is a choice that we make. We know how to escape it together. We're all better if we can live in a place where people can thrive and live a life free of economic and social and other types of poverty. And so this is really, when you ask the question of the challenges in the work, this is how I think about the challenge. The work is all designed toward ending these inequities and getting to a place where we're not experiencing the types of social and economic and climate poverty that we experience right now. More specifically, in terms of the challenges that get in the way of using good partnerships to get toward that goal, I think a challenge that we see right now is the decreasing willingness sometimes for people to stay in conversations where beliefs or values might be shared at a certain level, but then when we really get into the details, might start to be a little bit different. And what I see communities do to overcome that tendency to sort of move away from each other when we start to experience conflict is to really invest in relationships. I was talking to a colleague at an organization called Mantra for Change yesterday, which is based out of India, does similar work in terms of organizing place-based partnerships across India. And they made the really good point that you don't need to have an ongoing everyday relationship with a person or a group of people. It's often enough just to have really high quality, present, intentional relationships. You might go several weeks or months or even years without those kinds of interactions. But if they're loving, if they're empathetic, if they're ones where people are present, they really can be enough to build the kind of understanding and patience and love for one another that we need to have if we're going to stay in hard work together. So I'm really grateful that communities and leaders across communities are embracing that way of being as a way of overcoming the tendency that we sometimes have to move apart when things do get hard.
I couldn't agree more. And thank you so much for all those sentiments and actionable insights. I believe that in these times we need radical empathy, radical mercy, grace, compassion. Or else we're doomed, and we will never leave this space better for our children and our ascendants. So definitely, I couldn't agree more. And once again, thank you for your leadership, your candor, transparency, and authenticity. So my next question is, do you have a set of key priorities right now in your work?
We do have a set of key priorities. I'll speak to the work at Tamarack. Of course, we all hold many roles, and I have a set of key priorities as a neighbor and a mom and a human trying to, live in the community that I'm in. But when it comes to the work at Tamarack, they're actually probably pretty similar. But we have three key priorities right now that we've determined with the over 400 local communities that we work with across this country and beyond. And the first one is to really bring together as many people as we possibly can to have the confidence and the skills and the practice to really work on systemic issues. And so we're activating that by trying to reach as many people as we can with webinars and learning opportunities and other types of events and readings and videos that help people understand what local leaders and local communities are doing to really change systems around education and income and climate and other topics. So really trying to activate as many people as we can to be able to easily find the resources to do their own self-work, to become the change makers that they want to be. I often think about something that my good friends and oftentimes mentor, Dr. Adrienne Johnson Williams, based out of Memphis, Tennessee, has asked me, and she's encouraged me and many other people that she's impacted to ask the question of what are your most powerful roles? And so this work of really trying to build the capacity of change makers, I think of as being about helping people think about what is their most powerful role, given their passions, given their positionality, given the relationships that they have, what can they do to foster the kind of transformation toward justice that we need? The second goal is really about continuing to build as many local place-based partnerships as we can. So as I mentioned, there's 400. This work started 22 years ago, at least in the way that Tamarack has thought about it, in just 13 communities. And those 13 communities were looking around and asking the question of why poverty in so many formats continued to exist. And what could we do if we work together to try to address the poverty that does exist? That movement of 13 has now grown, as I said, to over 400. And our priority is really to continue to be in as deep relationship as we can with people in those communities to help them in their progress, to form partnerships, keep those partnerships going, and have those partnerships really focus as much as possible on the equity gaps that exist in their communities, and doing big things, bold things to address them. And then the third priority, Victor, with you and so many others, is really to think about how do we take what's so strong in local communities? How do we learn from the leaders who are doing work on the ground, who may not get recognition, who may not have a platform to share the amazing work that they're doing, but if they could share it, we could probably address these larger issues. Our work is really about trying to take these local examples, understand what's consistent across them, understand what's really strong, and use that to really advocate for change. Sometimes public policy change, sometimes change that's a little bit harder to measure about how people are thinking and making their decisions and about how they're sharing power in their communities, but really taking the local and turning it into something that's not niche and local, but that's really universal and widely present, so that there's support for local work, and so that the local solutions really are spreading to have the kind of skill that they need. I'm one of those people who's, like many of us, fighting like an 8-10 week cold at this point, so forgive me.
No, sending healing energy your way, and I appreciate once again your leadership and the precision of your words. I know that oftentimes when we think about, and I hate these terms, equity deserving, equity seeking, because most of the time these are equity denied groups. But when we think about colonization, capitalism, and ultimately imperialism and empire building, it's hard to really conceptualize what the future of poverty reduction looks like, or just eradication of poverty within a system of capitalism. But if you had the ability to share, and I believe you do, like what do you feel? How do you feel about the future of poverty reduction initiatives and poverty reduction work in Canada?
Well, I first want to thank you for naming the problems with the term equity seeking, equity deserving, equity denied. I agree with that fully. I've been thinking so much about language, maybe forever, but I feel like increasingly part of the reasons that perhaps partnerships slow down is because we don't interpret words in the same ways. So I think putting those definitions behind language and really asking the questions of what's behind, this word or these groupings of words, and how do we each understand them to be is really important. So thank you for that. I think that the future of ending poverty in Canada looks really bright. If you look at what happened in this country in 2021, when we had the pandemic era benefits in place, we met the goals that we have for ending poverty and reductions to poverty by 2050 in this country. We know how to do it. When we value everyone's humanity, we have no other choice but to make the kinds of decisions that put the right combination of income and income supports and other kinds of supports around every human, so that they have the systems in place to not have to live in poverty. Poverty, of course, is not an individual choice. Poverty is the choice of how we've designed our systems to keep some people small and unheard and without the resources that they need. So I hold a lot of hope for ending poverty, in part because we've shown that the reductions can happen. And because we have amazing leaders in communities who know what the answers are. When I talk to people who are impacted by poverty, they know what they need. They know what their communities need. And we're starting to see more seeds of the structures getting to put into place so that we're really listening to, and not just listening to, but deeply hearing and making decisions based on what people experiencing the problems are seeing. It's not as widespread as it could be, but I think we're building the momentum. We have the capacity to build the momentum to have these local solutions be much more the norm.
I couldn't agree more. A lot of times when we think about some of these pervasive and generational problems, it's not a how. We know how to solve these problems. It's usually a who and a where. Who are the thought leaders and practitioners that have the ability to attack these problems and to facilitate the systemic transformation? And where are the communities of practice that can be replicated, or the place-based models that can be adopted or adapted? So I agree completely. So once again, I appreciate your leadership and all that you do for so many. So this is my second last question. What is your ultimate goal, and what does success look like and feel like to you and your colleagues?
Ultimate goal is to end poverty in Canada in all of its forms. Economic poverty, the poverty of relationship that we have to our lands and the other living things, which if we ended that poverty, it would be just hand in hand with achieving climate equity and climate justice. And it's ending social poverty as well, the poverty of our connection to one another. I want to see a world, my colleagues at Tamarack, the more than 50, well, maybe that's an exaggeration, people in the 400 communities that we work with that together represent 58% of the population of Turtle Islands. I know that what all of us want to see is a country where there's enough, and where we're not just defining enough based on money. It's not enough to end economic poverty. It really has to be these other kinds of poverty that I've mentioned as well. So that's my ultimate goal. More specifically, I hold the goal of a local partnership that centers young people, that centers our elders, that centers the people who are experiencing the most critical problems that communities are identifying. I want to see that infrastructure, that relational infrastructure in every community, because it feels so good to be a part of it, to feel like you belong to a group of people who care deeply about the place that you care about, and who are willing to do work and to bring their own assets into that work. That process and that way of being is incredibly satisfying most of the time. And as we're working toward these hard goals, I think we also, you've taught me this, Victor, we need to also be able to see the joy. We need to be able to feel the sense of belonging. We need to be able to feel the sense of connection to each other if we're going to sustain ourselves in the work and really bring our best imagination and creativity and energy to it.
Ashe, amen, amen. I agree completely. Thank you so much. So my last question, do you have any closing thoughts or calls to actions for our listeners and our viewers?
Funny you asked that. When I thought about what you might ask me, I thought he might ask me about calls to action. So I'll offer a few, and I'll try to be brief here because it's late for you. I think my first call to action would be to really join me and so many others in thinking about what is the result that you seek. And this is the question you just asked me, Victor, but what is that bold transformational result that serves justice and that serves equity that you personally seek, and that prompts you to bring your best passion and your best gifts into your everyday? I think holding something that we can't achieve on our own, holding something that we might not fully achieve in our lifetimes, this is really the start of getting to the kind of creative, imaginative, bold action that we need right now. My second call to action would really be to think about the critical role that you bring into the work. Again, back to my friend and colleague, Adrienne Johnson-Williams, it's a really powerful question to think about, given the current context that I'm in, the meeting I'm in, the group of people that I'm in, the energy and just the personal way that my body and my mind feels right now. In whatever context it is, what is the critical role that I can hold? If it happens to be joining a local place-based partnership, I would encourage you to find yours, or reach out to us at Tamarack and we'll help you find yours. If it has anything to do with connection and belonging and ending the loneliness crisis that we're seeing, Please check out the Tamarack website because we're doing some really interesting work led by my colleague Jorge Garza around a national plan for belonging. I would also say, learn about your local community. There are beautiful things in every community. I was talking with some young people from Chatham-Kent, Ontario earlier this week, and they were describing just the things that they see in their community that I didn't even see when I drove through that community that are beautiful to them. And it just takes stopping to look and ask around other people of what's great about the places that you are, to realize what's there, to come to love that place. Learn about those assets, learn about the history of your communities as well, because it can help us start to unpack what needs to happen to get to a better place. And then I would just leave with, have a conversation. Danya Pastuszek is with the Learning Tree, and he speaks about falling in love with our neighbors, falling in love with the people that we're in connection with, even if it's transactional connection. And that happens through conversations. So I encourage you to have a conversation, ask the big questions, get past the small talk, and see what gifts people bring, what aspirations they have for their communities, and what you might learn from them based on different identities and experiences they might have.
Thank you so much, my beloved colleague, for all the introspection, the deep learnings, and your consistent leadership and solidarity. You bring so much to this work, you bring so much to this ecosystem, and you bring your whole self. And I just give thanks for our relationship. And this conversation is very similar to the ones that we have off camera. So I give thanks for your time this evening and investing this time with myself and our communities of practice. And we'll close the way we began this interview by acknowledging our creator, by acknowledging our ancestors, by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands we're on. We acknowledge all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all our elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. Thank you so much. I so appreciate you.
Thank you, Victor.